Happy Friday night, everybody. How's everyone doing? Welcome to the fourth episode of Piano Star Masterclass, brought to you by Piano League. I'm your host, Brian Lin, a professional pianist and a piano teacher. Ever since I graduated from Juilliard a few years ago, making piano education accessible to everybody has been one of my main goals. And that's why I created the series, the Piano Star Masterclass. It starts with a 30-minute interview with a professional pianist, followed by an hour of live-streamed piano lessons taught by that pianist. During the live stream, you can ask us any questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them. But remember, you can also sign up to be a performer. We have one more spot left in April, so apply soon. Piano Star is all about giving piano students virtual performing opportunities. So besides the masterclass, we also have the Piano Star Showcase, an hour-long virtual concert for young pianists ages 7 to 12. Application deadline is tonight. So the repertoire is only one piece. If your kids or students are within that age range and you want to give them a chance to perform, this is your last chance. Apply by midnight tonight. Now, I'd like to introduce our guest teacher today. As a soloist, he has performed with numerous orchestras as well as played in recitals across the United States, Poland, Austria, and Germany. He is currently working as the departmental accompanist at Davidson College in North Carolina and continues to perform nationwide. He is a concert pianist, chamber musician, organist, and educator. He completed his undergraduate studies at Rice University, graduating magna cum laude with degrees in piano and philosophy. He later received a Master of Music degree in piano performance at the Peabody Institute, where he is currently a doctorate candidate. So everybody, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Polish-American pianist Tomasz Robak. Welcome, Tom. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. So, first question: how are you holding up in the current quarantine? What have you been up to?
Well, a lot of extra time at home, obviously. Not probably as much piano work as I had anticipated, but it's been an opportunity in a way to spend a little bit more time with my young daughter, who's a little bit over 2. So.
Gotcha.
A bit of a silver lining, I think.
That's great. So our audience may not know Tom has a lovely 2-year-old daughter. So our topic today, because since we only have 30 minutes, so I'll just jump right in.
Sure.
It's about sight reading. So for the beginner audience out there, sight reading is, how would you describe sight reading?
Well, I guess the running definition is you get a piece of music in front of you and you are meant to play it at sight. So
right. You play
not
something.
So much,
go ahead.
Not so much just the reading, but actually the playing of it as you're reading it along.
Right. So you're playing something that you haven't seen before or you haven't learned before for the first time. So what has your own experience been with sight reading, and what made you want to talk about this topic today?
Well, I think it's a really important topic, and I think it's kind of it's a topic that everybody wants to know more about, and we kind of think about it, but it's always at the tail end of so many other concerns when it comes to piano playing. For me, obviously, as an accompanist here at Davidson, I apply this every day in my work. So I can speak from experience in saying that certainly the job itself, having to read a lot of new music constantly, has made me a better sight reader. And that experience in the last 6 to 8 months has made me want to talk about it now as well. Although I've been using that skill most of my life in a variety of contexts, whether it's playing for churches or even getting a graduate assistantship at Peabody, sight reading played an important part. And I actually had the pleasure of teaching sight reading at Peabody as well as a graduate assistant to some of the undergrads there, the freshman piano majors.
So they have a sight reading class right now?
There is a sight reading.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there is a sight reading class. It doesn't get a lot of glory, but
was it a new class, or has it always been?
It's always been a part of the curriculum for undergraduate pianists.
For undergraduate, that's why I didn't know. I see. So wow, so you must have a lot of experience in this. So in your opinion, what are some of the benefits to being able to sight read or sight reading regularly?
Well, I'd like to maybe talk about that, not just from my own perspective, but from something that was written about 100 years ago. It's a quote I came across a long time ago, and it really made me think about this probably when I was about, 21 or 2. This comes from the Dohnányi exercises, which are, I guess, pretty well known as some good technical exercises that you can use. And in the introduction, he writes this, which is kind of surprising for a technical book, quote unquote, and we'll talk about that maybe. But he says, a wide knowledge of musical literature can only be acquired by sight reading. I cannot sufficiently recommend pupils to start early with sight reading, piano as well as chamber music. I do not mean playing a piece once through, but to play it several times so as to become well acquainted with it. It may be argued that this could lead into superficial, untidy playing. The disadvantages of a lot of sight reading, though, can be balanced by stricter demands put to the pupil, et cetera, et cetera. And then much sight reading has advantages which are unfortunately not sufficiently considered. And basically, he goes on to say that you acquire a tremendous knowledge of the musical literature and sense of style, and actually that your technique also improves because you are doing a lot of things subconsciously and maybe not adding certain levels of self-conscious tension into what you're trying to achieve.
Gotcha. And have you reaped some of those benefits yourself when you're trying to sight read?
I do think so, especially the stylistic idea and just being able to read many pieces by different composers. You really start to get a much better sense of how to approach a new piece after all that.
Right. So you get to experience a bunch more new repertoire, versus if you had to just learn something, because it takes way longer.
Certainly, the way that we learn it typically, which is memorizing it and et cetera, it's a much longer process. And if you can use some of your energy, not just to memorize, but to just read for pleasure, for fun, and to get to know more music, that'll make note learning later for a piece that you're trying to learn for performance also much faster.
Gotcha. And in your opinion, do you think the skill of sight reading should only be applicable to advanced pianists, intermediate pianists, or can pianists of all levels learn this, or should pianists of all levels learn to sight read?
I think certainly it should be taught as early as possible. I think it's a really important skill, and it should not be overlooked, especially in the early education of pianists. I know there's so much that we need to do when we're teaching pianists in the early levels, but I've found in all of my adjudicating, especially whenever there's a sight reading component, that tends to be pretty weak. And I think that's not to say that teachers are not aware of it, but again, it's just on the list of things that we typically think about in terms of priorities, it tends to sit pretty low. But I challenge people to think about maybe bumping it up a little bit higher and seeing what the benefits of that can be.
Right, and we'll get to some specific examples later. Why do you think sight reading is so difficult, especially for, I guess, beginners? But I guess not just for beginners, but why is it so difficult?
I think that ties into what I just said about we have so many concerns as pianists for kind of precision and perfection in quotes and interpretation and memorization and just kind of focusing on the repertoire component as something that has to be very polished. And we tend to just kind of put it by the wayside. Our teachers might even tell us to do it. And I know from my own life, when I was younger, I kind of didn't really listen to that until I sort of knew better. And so we have to keep reminding people, especially younger pianists, that it actually is really useful and really important.
Now, when you say younger pianists, how young are we talking about? when should one start learning sight reading? Give me an age.
Oh, well, I think probably, not the very first year of lessons is maybe not necessarily but depending on how quickly you progress, if a student is able to play some short pieces in two parts, some short Baroque pieces, kind of first repertoire collection books, then by the time they get to the second book, you can start incorporating some easy sight reading from early method books and from those super easy repertoire books from the first year. So I would say, if you're 8 years old, you could already be sight reading, and just a little topical application in a lesson context when you start out that young. And then later you can, as a teacher, you can add duets, certainly, which is always super fun. And doing that on the spot with them to kind of challenge them, and then maybe pairing students up for some kind of studio class, sight reading party, where people just kind of have fun with it and go with the flow.
Gotcha. All right. So now to the core content of our talk, right? So I'm someone who's really bad at sight reading, for example, let's say, and what can I do right now, today, to become a better sight reader?
Well, so today you can do a couple of things directly and a couple of things indirectly. And I would advise that you start with maybe the direct things and then also think about the indirect things. So directly speaking, of course, you pick up and you read. You pick something up and you read. The general rule is that you try to read something that's below your technical level of challenge. So if you're playing a Clementi sonatina, you don't want to be reading Beethoven's Hammerklavier as a sight reading exercise. On the other hand, if you're at the level of playing a Beethoven sonata, then it's perfectly appropriate to read some Clementi sonatinas as a sight reading exercise. So what's really helpful in this is looking at some of the graded repertoire lists for, say, the ABRSM, the Royal Schools of Music Associated Board, and they have graded levels of repertoire. And if you're, say, or somewhere around level 7, you could read level 5 or lower, depending on where you are. And that's a great way to get started, just jumping right into the repertoire. For teachers to select books, I mean, I used to go to these libraries and just kind of scope out things that looked interesting. Anything from what's coming out right now, these like Schirmer performance editions, Baroque to modern.
Sure. Can you just hold it up a little longer so that
Sure.
our audience can see? So, right, Hal Leonard Piano Libraries, Baroque to modern, early intermediate level. Right.
Sure.
What's it called? That's just so it's not a sight reading book. It's
a
regular
book of pieces.
Book.
Sure.
I see.
I actually think reading real pieces is the way. I do think for the very early exercises you can use some specifically sight reading. I mean, there are books that are meant to do that, but honestly, I think reading pieces is a little more satisfying. So if you can start reading pieces right away, I think you should do that. Any Baroque collections, kind of easy Bach, easy Handel, top 100 classical pieces, those kinds of collections.
Gotcha.
Or more advanced pianists, even Mozart pieces and Haydn and Czerny etudes are great for just learning some patterns. All of this will help your technique because you're picking up a lot of patterns along the way that are hopefully being built into your system, especially if you read not just once, but maybe a few times through, like that author was talking about. For contemporary music, there's also a lot of these kinds of easy, there's a book of easy Soviet pieces, for example, that I had on hand. I don't know where I must have put it down in a different corner of my studio. I'm sorry about that. But
you can. Can you say that again? The book's name?
This was an old book, but it said Easy Pieces by Soviet Composers or something like that.
Gotcha.
And, so basically just anthologies, looking through a bunch of anthologies of music. Composers that are great for younger or kind of easier, more contemporary pieces are Alexander Tonsman. He's a Polish-French composer. He writes kind of easier music sometimes. Even Lutosławski's got some pieces for children. The Russian composers, Cherepnin, some Kabalevsky is great. He wrote a ton of children's music that is classical style. There are easy pieces by Shostakovich. There's the whole Microcosmos by Bartok.
Bartok, right.
yeah, so it's just
So-
you can play
so-
good music by good composers.
So the point is read something easier than your level and read real music, basically, right?
I think so. I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the direct approach is
Mhm.
literally sitting down with it and doing it. And I think
Mhm.
something like 10 minutes into your practice session is not incredibly difficult to add, but
Right.
it compounds over time tremendously. So it may not feel like you're going to be, if you do this today for 10 minutes, you're not probably going to feel like you're a better reader. But if you do it today for 10 minutes and then you do it for the next 3 months,
Mhm.
I guarantee you that 3 months from now, you're going to feel like you can read that level of literature that you were just reading much, much quicker and with less effort and
Gotcha.
possibly even at tempo.
Gotcha.
So here's to backtrack another consideration. You are not required to play things at tempo when you're trying to sight read. So pick a tempo that you can get through reliably for the piece. And in order to be able to do that, you often have to kind of scan the piece. So you don't just look at the beginning and the first page, but you open the score and you look through the piece. You see if there are any key changes. You look out for traps, any places that might look like they might already be trickier just by looking at them with your eye. And before you start the piece, you can, judging by that, you can decide, okay, how quickly do I want to get into this tempo? And so this leads also into some indirect skills, because in order to be able to read without a piano, you also have to have some oral skills and some theory skills. So if your musicianship skills get better, if you work on sight singing, and if you work on learning your chords and your theory, you're also going to be much better with your eye in terms of just quickly identifying what's in front of you. And you'll be able to send that signal faster to your hands and execute quicker the music that you're trying to read.
Gotcha. So what about even more beginners? Because I'm saying this because I know students who let's say someone who's not so familiar with sharps and flats, for example. That's just one
Okay,
example,
sure, yeah.
right? So they may be able to read something in C major relatively well. They when it comes to when it has key signatures, they don't do so well when it has black keys. Are there specific ways that they can the methods that they can use to try to combat that fear of black notes?
Right. Well, I guess it depends what method you're using in the very beginning. So if you're using a method that focuses a lot on C major and the related keys in the beginning, then that becomes more of an issue. If you're transposing right from the very beginning and treating the keys as equally as you can for a 6-year-old, say, it's a little bit easier to then work with sharps or flats. But say it's the first case, and then in that case, I would say you have to insist on a good knowledge of scales and arpeggios, particularly. So if they want to, if they've been playing in C major and now they want to play in D major, they're not going to get very far unless they've got the D major scale feeling pretty well in their hands.
So it ties into their how good they are with the scales, basically.
It does, yeah. So you do have to have some technical ability, but I think for a really young child, you can have them playing pentascales, 5-note scales in every key very quickly. And then you can find all kinds of pieces, or you can even write your own pieces if you're a teacher, or you can find the little short pieces you can buy Bartok, where there's a lot of 5-note scale material inside of there where the hand just stays in one place. And those are things that even a very young child could comfortably get to read at sight.
Gotcha. So I'm still curious about that Peabody sight reading class. I can't get over it. So besides, obviously picking the correct repertoire, doing it, 10 minutes a day or more, what do you teach in the class? What do they do besides just what do you have them do besides just having them literally read?
Well, I mean, it was kind of like a lab-based class. I mean, we really did play. So a lot of what we did is we read duets, piano duets, anything from Mozart sonatas, the ones that he wrote for his sister, to
Duets with you and the student, or two students?
typically two students getting together.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and
Okay.
then kind of shaking it up. If we had a class of, say, a group of 4, then we would distribute those students around, and that's to simulate what happens in real life. Which, say, in my example, when I have a singer come in the room and I have a piece that's not very familiar to me, I have to react very quickly and get through the music together with them, even if it's not going to be a note perfect performance. But I have to know how to play through a piece without stopping, and that's a skill that we're not made to practice when we're practicing by ourselves. When we're not performing with others, we tend to stop and correct.
Mm-hmm.
And another part of sight reading is being able to get through the whole piece uninterrupted, even if you make a mistake, and you just keep your count going.
Gotcha. Right. So before I ask my next question, I just want to remind our audience, if you have frustrations with your sight reading in your daily practice, now is your chance to ask the question in the comment. So I wanted to just elaborate. I wanted you to elaborate a little bit on how much time one should spend on sight reading. I was talking to Nicholas the other day about how one should spend, considerable amount of time in mental practice. So now pianists not only have to practice their own piece, they have to mental practice, and now they have to, delegate some time to sight reading. What would you say? Like if I were only able to practice, let's say 2 hours a day, 1 to 2 hours a day, how much time should I spend on sight reading?
I think you can still do 5 to 10 minutes. You can just use that as part of your warm up. I think it's a great way to just wake your brain up in any case. If you're about to sit down at the piano, play a few of your favorite technical things that you want to get warmed up, whether it's scales or anything. You do that for 5 to 10 minutes, and then another 5 to 10 minutes on something new that you want to read. And then you can go and practice the rest of your repertoire.
Did you have a routine when you were growing up? Did you have a sight reading routine?
See, I didn't, and I wish I had. My backstory is kind of
Right.
atypical, actually.
Okay,
But,
feel free to share.
Well,
Yeah,
I think I read a lot of things by myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that
You mean music? Read as in music? Okay.
Sure, yeah. I think whatever skills I've acquired were because of my being drawn to whatever music books I had around, and I would just kind of pick them up, and whether or not I could actually play the repertoire or not, I kind of tried. And so it wasn't very structured, but I think it did actually help me in that way to be a better sight reader even today. But when I really started thinking about it seriously, then it became kind of a regular part of my routine, and it also became kind of fun. I mean, it's just great to read a new piece, and it's like when you get to be a slightly more advanced pianist, or just somebody who even really loves the repertoire. It's a little bit like being in a candy store. You pick a lot of things that you want to all eat at once or whatever, and so it's very attractive to be able to do that and pick up a score and start reading it.
I totally get that. I recently started just something for fun. I would learn a piece and play it every day, like just a new piece, like
Yes.
a short one, like 1 to 2 minutes, and it's just been so fun. It's just I'm always used to spending 2-3 months learning a piece, but
Exactly. Well, and that's another great exercise. See what you did. That ties into it. It doesn't have to be. You could say that it's going to be a project for you, and it's going to be a piece that you actually will learn, but you're going to learn it a different way than the pieces that you're normally practicing. So you'll have a piece that's your sight reading project piece, and you put it up on your music rack, and you work on it for that 5 to 10 minutes, and it's an easy piece, and eventually you'll learn it by, say, repeating it a bunch of times. So I'm not saying you have to throw it away, the moment that you read it a couple of times through. If you like the piece and you want to learn it, by all means, go ahead.
So when you are learning a piece versus when you're practicing sight reading a piece, is there a difference?
I think so. I think in sight reading a piece, you have to rely a lot on your habits that you've already formed by the sort of deep learning that we do in piano lessons. So say if I if I pick up a piece and it's a Baroque piece, well, I'm then relying on all of the kind of ideas that are floating around my head about what Baroque music should sound like in order for me to have sort of an instinctual articulation and spontaneous decisions about where to play staccato, where to phrase, and these kinds of things. That's more of a style issue. And that's another indirect thing I don't want to forego mentioning, because I think that's really important, just listening a lot. So if you want to get better at sight reading, you should also listen as much as possible to different kinds of music, and preferably with a score in front of you so you can kind of follow along. That goes from anyone intermediate up. If you can listen to pieces in a similar style to the one you're learning, you're going to pick up all kinds of information that becomes sort of subconscious and a part of you, that makes it easier to not have to deliberately decide while you're reading what you're going to do. You just kind of go for it, because you know that that gesture, for example, this kind of shape, this kind of gesture, this requires that in this style, if that makes any sense.
Yes, that's what I found as well. Like, for example, if I've listened to enough Mozart operas, symphonies, and concerti, I find playing Mozart sonatas easier.
Absolutely.
It's a much easier process when I know what to expect almost, even without really reading the notes. I think that really that's sort of what you're saying.
Absolutely. And I think listening to music that's not piano music is crucial, because you get those ideas. The piano is really good at imitating other instruments, and composers often do that in their pieces, as they have some idea in mind about a color or an articulation that comes from either string instrument or woodwind instrument. And for you to be listening to orchestral music or singers, you get a whole nother idea about breathing and phrasing that you can then bring into your piano playing. I actually think we learn probably the most from listening to other instruments than we do from even from listening to other pianists play.
Gotcha. So the key is to listen a lot to different genre, different instruments, and especially in similar style to the stuff that you're trying to sight read.
Yeah, sure.
One last bit of detail that I didn't want to leave behind. When you're sight reading, is it okay to do it, separate hands like you're learning a piece, or would you say you really should just put both hands in a consistent tempo?
Probably not. I think you should try to go for absorbing as much information from the page as you can. Now, part of sight reading also is being good at prioritizing what's important, and that comes from a better knowledge of music and also from good knowledge of theory. But we know from most music until about 1900, we can bet that the bass line is going to be really important, and some kind of third in the harmony that will give us information, and then the melody. So even if the chord is a huge chord that somehow has all of these bass notes and arpeggios or something, if it's a chord like that, all you really need is that to simulate it to get the same kind of information. And what I played just there was a bass note with three notes in the right hand. So you can learn also some techniques for quote unquote cheating, but not really cheating, just kind of extracting the information quickly.
That's for more advanced, right? Like
more advanced,
if you have complicated chords, you can.
But if you're young, then I think find pieces that you can try both hands together. Now it's all contextual, right? So it depends on who we're talking about. If you feel like you can't read anything right now and you have tons of trouble, then of course it's okay. Read one line. Get good at reading one line.
Right.
If you're having trouble doing both hands together, get good at reading one line. Or if you have more trouble reading the bass clef versus the treble clef, work on the bass clef more. Sometimes the things that help that most are sight singing books and little. You could pick up a hymnal, or pick up something like a sight reading book for oral skills, or solfege books, anything like that with solfege in it, and you just practice either playing it or singing it, hearing it, and then you're most likely going to overcome that challenge.
I see. How long do you think before, if someone were to start consistently practice sight reading, how long do you think it will take them to notice their improvements?
I think you'll start noticing it probably in a few weeks already.
Okay, that's soon.
Like you'll start to notice some things changing about how you look at music and how you're looking at particular repertoire. I think you're really going to feel a lot more confident if you're doing it consistently after a few months, 6 months, something like that, 3 to 6 months. You'll be like, oh wow, I'm so much better than I was. And obviously, if you continue that for a couple of years, you're really going to notice a difference from
Right.
where you started.
Right. So remember, guys, 10 minutes a day at least, right? 10 minutes a day.
Yeah,
Spend
but keep it
on sight
going.
reading. Keep it going. Keep it going. Do you do sight reading exercises with your students when you teach piano?
Yeah, I sometimes would just put something in front of them to either to see where they're at,
Gotcha.
or to. But I actually what I like to do is read as a duo. So to get some music where
Right.
I'm playing a more
Duet.
difficult rondo part and they're playing a primo part that's a little bit easier for them.
And it's way more fun than just reading,
Yeah, I think so.
a
Yeah,
single note line.
yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. All right. So, wow, that was 30 minutes. That was quick. All right. So we have our first student actually in the waiting room
Wow, fantastic.
of the virtual waiting room here. So let's get her in. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Her name is Jina.
Gina.
Jina. All right. So we will do that.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
Gina. You can turn on your video. There we go. Well,
Hi.
your your camera is a bit. You need to unlock your screen. This happened in the last masterclass.
Oh, okay.
So what you need to do, Gina, is here. Oh, I guess it's. You need to unlock this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as you unlock that.
I unlocked that.
Yes, there we go. And then put it back. This is what happens
Rotating screen, right? Yeah, right.
with iPhones, and
Yeah.
it happens a lot with when I teach my own. Oh, it's still like that
要
for some
竖起
reason.
来，问看是不是要竖起来还是横过来？问一下。
Do they need?
Yeah, you can.
You could put it that way. Yes.
Yeah, you can put it that way. Yeah,
Sure.
this is good. This is perfect.
Perfect.
All right, so I'll leave it to you, Tom.
Sure. Hi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to
Thanks
meet
for being with us. So can you tell me a little bit about how long you've been playing?
I learned a little bit in China, but it wasn't that well for me. So I started all the way from the first level. So I've been learning for the first things that they should learn for
Okay.
that they actually can read the notes already.
Right. Okay.
So,
Okay. Gotcha. And so how many years ago was that?
I learned piano when I was really little, but I can't remember how old was I, but then like 5 years old. And
Okay.
then, but I didn't really like that much and like piano that much. So when I was in China, I didn't really practice that much. So that made me didn't have piano really did really well. So I had to start over again.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's okay. You'll catch up very quickly. Don't worry. It's not a problem at all. And then you can get rid of any funny habits that you might have picked up when you were younger. So I'd love to hear you play. Can you play for us? Kind of do a performance and just we'll see where you are right now. Thank you very much. So are you feeling a little nervous? A little bit nervous?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, don't worry. You'll get another chance, another shot at that at the very end after we work a little bit together. Is that okay? Okay. So I think you're doing some really lovely things, and I think if this is you restarting or learning a new way to play, I think you're in good hands with whoever's teaching you. Your hands look really nice. You're using kind of you're staying close to the keys, and all those things are very good. I'd like to talk to you about something that maybe you've never heard before, and that's actually mixing up the speed at which you practice. So have you been told a lot to practice kind of slowly?
Because I get nervous when I look at people or some people looking at me, so I had to play it slowly, or if I play it fast, I'll get more things.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. So it has to do a little bit with nerves. Well, in practicing, it's sometimes good to try out different ideas and not necessarily worry about it the same way that you think about how you're going to play in front of people. Because in practicing, we're trying to take things apart a little bit and then put them back together. So I'd like for you to try just that very first measure, actually, when you have, and I have my score here, so I'll just kind of move my camera to my hands, where you have this. And I'd like for you to just stop right at the downbeat of that measure. So when you play 1, 2, 3, 1, and stop. And if you could play it just a little bit faster than you were doing. Awesome. Okay. That, I like to call that a little chunk, right? That's a little chunk of the piece. So now, can you play that? How about if you play that 3 times in a row, but instead of reading it from the page, can you look a little bit more at what your hands are doing? Okay, cool. Now, is that a music book that you have, or is it just sheets of paper?
Book. It's a book.
Okay, can you put the book away for a second? And just play that much for me. Yeah, so how did that feel? Pretty easy, right? Pretty good? Okay, can you try it a little bit faster even now without the book? And what's the last note going to be? Try to challenge yourself. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so this is hopefully really interesting for you to feel, right? You kind of probably felt a little bit of like, oh, what comes next? Oh, I remember. Here it comes, right? And so that little chunk, now if you try it a few more times in your practice, just that little chunk, you're actually going to memorize it so that when you look at your music, it's only going to remind you of what it is that you need to do. It's not going to, you're not going to have to kind of read it every single time, if that makes any sense. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you'll get little chunks that you'll remember, oh, okay, this is what my hand does when I play this part. You'll be like, oh, okay, I just go up the scale this way. And so now I'd like to do the same thing. If you could grab your book again and take the second measure.
Okay.
So now we're on the second measure. Start on the downbeat. So you're going to be on D and B, and go to the downbeat of the next measure. Okay, now do that a couple of times through. And you want to be looking down at the keyboard so you know what notes you're playing at the keyboard. Excellent. Now we're going to combine them, and we're going to start from the beginning and play to the third measure. Awesome. Can you close your book and do that? Hey, that's fantastic. That's great. Okay, so are you feeling confident about those two measures? That only took us, I don't know, 4 minutes probably. So if you were to do that with pretty much every little chunk, by the time you're done, you're gonna feel so much better about playing it, and it's gonna feel very, very comfortable, I think. So we could try a little bit of that probably in the second section. You were a little bit more nervous. So let's break that up a little bit more. Bring the score back and let's look at the second section. Yeah, and for this one, I'd like you to go from the B to the D. So if you could play this, just that much for me. And you could do the repeated note, of course. I'm sorry, I know there is no repeated note. I'm sorry. That's funny. Why did I say that? Because it feels like it should go. So, feels like it should do the same thing. It's doing something different. We can notice that it's going. Instead of going this way, it goes. And now there's going to be another scale. So that's another way that we can notice what a piece is doing and remember it. Like, oh, that sounds a lot like the beginning, but actually it's going to do a different rhythm there. But anyway, try that again with just that much, and then put your book away. And maybe one more try with the book in front of you, but looking down at your hands now. Excellent. Now put the book away. We don't need the book anymore. Okay, awesome. Do you think you could remember how it keeps on going without looking at it, just as a challenge?
I need to try. I'm going to try.
Yeah, try it out. Okay, yes, I'd like for you to stop. So were you surprised at how much you remembered? Yeah, you actually know a lot more of the piece than I think you think that you know. So you're probably kind of jinxing yourself a little bit by looking up so much. So one tip that I would give you is practice this way where you're doing these little chunks and bits. So I would break that second section up into these little chunks. Then I might go from that downbeat to the next downbeat. And then I might go from that to the next downbeat. And then I would probably start to combine them into slightly longer sections of maybe 2 measures each. And start to do that without the book and just really focusing on what are my hands doing? What does it feel like to play this? And what does it sound like to play it? And your ear knows how the piece is supposed to go already because you've been practicing. You've been a good practicer about it. I can tell that much. And so it's a little bit more about trusting your ear and also feeling what your hands are doing. We have to at some point leave the reading behind a little bit and get into the physical sensation of the keyboard. And if you play little chunks, and I just want to show you some of the shapes that my hand will do. Say in the beginning where you have the scale, I start kind of with a low wrist where my thumb is, and then I take a shape and I go up. So I go down and up. And so part of that is also something that you can practice in small chunks. If you were used to just playing kind of with your fingers, kind kind of like that, you could start thinking about maybe using your wrist a little bit more. Has your teacher talked about using your wrist at all?
Yeah, he told me that you can lift your wrist, but not that high.
Yeah, it's not like an exaggerated, you don't go kind of like this, but you try to pick your hand up a little bit, like you were lifting, like you were kind of a feather and you're lifting up and flying away, like a balloon is grabbing your wrist and it's just letting it float up. So do you think you could play the scale from G to the D and just floating up for me? Awesome. And so now when you play that, you don't have to do the floating motion so much. You just keep it kind of small, but still enough for us to hear that it's becoming lighter. Awesome. And that's the kind of stuff that you can also practice while you're doing those little tiny chunks. You can think about, how do I make this little tiny scale sound a little bit more beautiful, right? Every little tiny scale, even a group of 3 or 4 notes, can sound really nice and nicely shaped. And have you talked about a lot about shaping with your teacher too, just incorporating that?
Yes.
Yeah, I think shaping is really, really important, and it's going to also help you play more confidently through. So can you bring your book back up again? I like how much of that section you knew. You seem to know all of this pretty well. That was one section that you knew 100%. The next section, maybe a little bit less well. So let's look at that section now. Okay, awesome. And so I'm gonna ask you for a little, I guess, a bit of a quiz or something, or a test, right? So we've been working on doing those little chunks. So could you show me and everybody else how you might work on that a little bit differently now that you have this chunking idea? Maybe breaking it up a little bit more as you work on it and making sure that you look down a little bit more as well. So show us a little bit how you might practice that. Yeah, that's the idea. Does the scale feel a little bit better already? It sounded like the third scale was really smooth, because you weren't looking up at the page so much anymore, right? So could you try now from maybe going on and just complete that little bar? Now go back. I would go back to this again. Yeah, we're gonna have to check the left hand right now, right? So you're coming out of your thumb was sitting on the A. Is that correct? Is that correct? You had your in your left hand, you had your thumb on the A from before. Yeah.
My thumb is yeah.
Okay, so the next note, what finger do you play on the B?
The third.
The third finger. Okay, great. So let's practice just moving 1 to 3. Do that a couple of times. Now I want you. Good. Now I would like for you to do the octave before the A to A, and then cross over. Yeah, you're getting it. You're getting it. You know what I'm after, right? Is to get more comfortable with how that transitions from, how it moves from one place to the other. Good. So let's go from, how about the fourth measure of that section from the C sharp, and then going on. Yes, that's awesome, right? So now it worked because now you remembered you have to cross over 3. So I think probably in your practicing, you want to work a little bit more on the places where your hand is moving or changing and getting really good at becoming sort of almost automatic about how you move in that place. So if my left hand is playing, my fingering is maybe different than yours, but I would start 2, 3, 4, right? 4, 2, 4, 1, 5, 1, and then it's the shift. So I would just practice the last bit where it goes A, 3, thumb, 2, thumb. Yeah, and then adding a little bit of right hand in moments like just doing those 4 notes, for example. So B, D sharp, C sharp, D. Now can you add the right hand on top? Yeah, awesome. And just working on that, say 3 times in a row. Yeah, can you look down at your hands now? Don't look at the music. Yeah, does that feel better?
Yes.
That feels better, right? So now we're going to go back and we're going to play from the A. Yeah, it seemed like you were able to anticipate, you were able to think about what's coming next a little bit better. So the more you do that, the more you're going to remember, oh, this is coming next. I can trust my hand and kind of not think so much about reading it. Now let's go and talk about something else which is related to this. In order to get faster at tempos, and this goes out to kind of everybody that's watching as well, we sometimes can practice a passage with what I called mixed tempo practice, and it relates to this chunking. So if you have a shape like the scale in the beginning, I think in the beginning when you're starting, you're kind of reading it 1 note at a time, but then you start to realize, oh wait, this is a scale. I can play it kind of faster and maybe in 1 motion, like what I showed you, down and up. And so then you can practice it even faster, but just in a small chunk. Because the small chunk makes sure that you're going to play it right and you won't make a mistake. So can you try it even that tempo? Yeah, and you can do it. Can you look down at your hands? Don't look at the score. You know the music. Yes, you're doing it. That sounded great. Okay, so that becomes a little bit more interesting, right? Because you're not playing so slowly and you can kind of start to hear, oh, I can really play this piece and I can play it quickly, but it's just a little chunk. And so the challenge is that you have to be really careful is don't start playing the whole piece that way. You have to limit yourself to just the small little chunk that you're working on to make that faster. So in that first measure, I would play slow, and then I might play a little faster. I might play a little faster still, even faster. Okay, I feel like I know it now. I can go back to the regular tempo, and it feels easy. Does that make sense? So let's look at the section that was bothering us down from from A. If you can speed that up a little bit with the crossover 3, and do that a bunch of times. Yeah, so remember, think in your right hand, you're playing a scale, and then focus on your left hand and look down. And don't go on, just play those notes and get to the G and stop. Yep, and now try it 3 more times. Yeah. Okay, now that should feel easy relatively. So now you can go back to a normal tempo. Does it feel like you know it better now after doing it a few times? Right? Yeah, I think so. And that helps us to kind of get over the hump of trying to read it every single time. And then we just remember, what does it feel like to play that shape? And our hand kind of helps us glide along. In this piece, what's hard, of course, is when you have those moments of kind of independent notes that don't connect. But for those, I would recommend grouping from the G to the F sharp right here. That's one group. Then I might take this as a separate group. And then I would do the left hand as a separate group from the D. So can you mark those in for me if you have a pencil anywhere close to you? If you don't, that's okay. You could mark it later.
Do you have a pencil?
Awesome. So I'm talking about here. Can you put a little line at the end of that just to break it off? Yeah. Section it off. Right. And then the next section is going to go. And then the last section will go from the D. And you'll notice that I'm doing something funny. I'm always going to the downbeat. I'm not stopping where the bar line is, because the bar line shouldn't actually make us stop. Like, I don't want you to ever practice this way, almost ever. But I think that's an easy mistake that everybody tries to do, because the page just looks like it should stop in those places. But the music wants to go. We want to hear that note completed, right? Otherwise it sounds like, what are you doing? Where's the note? We want to hear this note come. So always play to the note that your ear kind of remembers or wants to hear in front, and never try to stop where the bar line is. So I guess takeaways for the last, and I don't know if we're running out of time. I think Brian's probably watching, but
it's 9 o'clock sharp right now. You're
sharp.
perfect.
Okay. Wow. I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to let you play one more time, but I think you'll take these practice tips, and if you just use the chunking idea and do tiny little, maybe 1 bar chunks, and try to go over the bar line and then combine them, you'll start to feel really comfortable. Remember to start challenging yourself and taking the score and putting it away to the side. See if you can remember. And then the score will just become like a prompt, like something like, if you're in a school play and somebody's holding up a card and tells you, but you already know the lines. You already know what you're going to say, and that's just there for security or something, So the music in front of you shouldn't be something that you're reading every time you play, but it's something that you can make a part of yourself, and then it comes out from you instead of kind of it's being in this weird place. Like, you can feel like the music belongs to you and that it is in your mind. Do you have any questions for me?
No. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Jina. You did a wonderful job. Thank you again.
Wonderful work.
Appreciate it. All right. So, wow. That was very, let me get her. That was very cute. What a cute girl.
She's wonderful. Yeah, she's wonderful.
Wow.
I was happy to work with her.
Yeah, I was impressed by how eloquent she was when she was
Oh,
talking.
very smart. She's
A
so
lot
smart.
of a lot of kids have trouble talking and and responding, but she didn't have that problem.
No, yeah,
She was
wonderful,
great.
wonderful student. I'm sure if if she keeps going, she's going to be a wonderful pianist. We'll hear about her one day.
I'm sure too. Gina, everybody. All right, so next up we have something different. I guess we could
Now for
completely
something
different.
completely different.
Completely different. We have Sean, and he will be playing. First of all, he's a bit older. He's I think 19 or 20, and he will be playing Prokofiev's third sonata in A minor. So
Sure.
let's get him in. All right. Hi, Sean.
Hi, Sean.
Hello.
How's it going?
Going well. It's going well.
Good, good. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
All right, so I'll leave it up to I'll leave it to you guys.
All right.
All right. All right, Tom.
Okay. Yeah,
All
great. I just want to figure out how to full screen Sean here so that I can see him all the time. Pin video. Okay, there we go. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Nice to meet you. I see you're at home. So
Yeah.
so are all of us almost. I'm able to still go into my music studio here, so I've got my piano in front of me. So tell me a little bit more about your background, just real quick.
Okay. My name is Sean. That was already said. I am a sophomore music major. Been playing piano for I think 12 or 13 years. I actually just don't know. I don't know what else to say besides that.
Okay, where are you music major?
I don't want to exactly say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We'll keep that anonymous.
Yeah.
All righty. No
That's
problem.
fine. That's fine.
No problem at all. Okay. Then without further ado, I think we all want to hear you play, and then we'll talk.
All right.
Wow, bravo. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I was not able to hear just a couple of measures because of the sound difficulty, but most of it I got. So that's awesome. I want to commend you for your kind of very clear expressiveness and emotional investment in the piece. I think I can tell from your playing that you really care about this music, and that the piece is important to you and that it means a great deal. I think, well, I have some things to say, obviously, and that's what we're here for. But I want to be saying that on the backdrop of, I think you've obviously done a lot of great work with this already. So now we're just putting some icing on the cake. So I think you're right, and these are the kinds of details that are hard to hear in the first page, for example. Just how much pedaling to use. Of course, that kind of thing would sound a lot more clear on a real piano, but just make sure that you're not over pedaling this first section here. And I have not played this piece really, but if you could just open up your score okay. right at the very beginning. This is all really just pad. If you think about it as kind of orchestral padding rather than real notes, and you can do it. Just make sure you don't catch these dirty notes in your pedal. All of this stuff though has to be crystal clear, and the left hand has to be really a whole different idea. The stuff in the left hand is kind of murky. The stuff in the right hand is probably what kind of instrument is playing that, if you were to orchestrate it?
I assume brass.
Yeah, exactly. Not piano, right? Yeah, so we have to sound as brassy as possible. I would say in general, what I'm getting from your playing is maybe a little bit of hesitancy in going across. And I'd like to hear more kind of a longer idea, longer line. So even in the beginning. That's what it is, right? That's the whole idea from beginning to end. Even if you take a little bit of pause when you go. So can you go play that section, but go through it so that we can get to the downbeat at 7?
Measure 3?
Yeah, take it from the beginning.
Okay. I turned down just a little bit. That might help the audio issues a little bit
sure,
too,
sure.
Just to let you know.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so did you hear how it sounded? It's probably because of the jump, but it would be great if you could somehow convince us that it sounds. So there's a way to do it, probably by maybe catching the F a little bit earlier. Again, I don't play this, so it's funny for me to demonstrate, but if I'm thinking just intuitively, probably you can catch that F almost before the downbeat. Right, and then you will play it in time. Can you try that a little bit slower, maybe 70% tempo? Right, because the idea is that it goes across. Right? So we want to hear that. And the stretch is nice. The stretch, I think, comes from before and not after. So if you go, then we're like, oh, what's going on? But if you go, then we feel like we're moving somewhere, moving forward. Want to try that section again?
Yeah.
Keep going.
Starting at measure 4 or where?
Start from the top, keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, can you stop right there? So that's what I'm after, is getting these parts connected, and this might help you if you practice a little bit a little bit differently than what you might have been doing. I wonder if you've been practicing kind of on the downbeat a lot and not thinking about practicing maybe say from the beat over to the next beat and then going. You see what I'm doing? I'm going across every time.
Mm-hmm.
And that will solve that problem if you practice. Would you like to try maybe running that slowly a couple of times through, see if it changes anything? Yeah, so I think the issue there is so I would practice just the right hand. And just remembering where that sits, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because we have so little time, I'd like to keep going. You know what I mean? Is it okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Just put that feather in your hat. And we'll keep doing it. Can you go from 13? I think that's the next thing. Yeah, so for all of that, the most important thing about this kind of music to make it sound really convincing is actually the transitions. Once you get the basic kind of technical difficulties out of the way, then it becomes about how do you connect the characters and the sections together. So I wasn't entirely convinced by this. I'd like to be more surprised about the fact that it goes, right? Instead of, I really heard that as a new section in a way that sounded like you closed the chapter on the one before, but that's the transition bar. So I'd like to hear going again across. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to do that piano subito like that without actually physically stopping your body, but that's one thing that you have to learn when you get to be more advanced, right?
Yeah.
So you have to practice that. Would you like to try from 13 again?
Sure. I think
Yeah, do you see what I mean? Do you see what I
Yeah.
mean? It could be a fingering thing. What fingers are you using there?
Let's see, I have 3, 2 on the E to D sharp, and then switching to 1 to start, I think. Yeah, to start the next bar.
Yeah, I think you just need to be making it smoother. Can you play just the right hand? Yeah, sorry, I played the wrong rhythm. Right, of course. So I think there's a way to move your hand across. Have you tried a funny fingering like 1, 2, 4, 5?
No. Okay.
So check out my hand right now. It's pretty. It works pretty well, I think. And then you're right there. If you go down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, something like that. You have to figure out the choreography of it a little more probably, but I'm thinking down and up. I'm using this as a across and over and up. Yeah, it maybe feels more risky to you, but it could actually work better. Sorry. I would experiment a little bit. If not, then you could do 1, 4, 1, 5.
That's what I'm doing now.
Okay. Then you just have to make sure that's really connected. Legato.
Okay.
Yeah, you may not need to change that, but just make it smoother. Like as if you were playing it with either one gesture or 2 hands. It needs to sound like that's easy for you. You know what I mean? It can't sound like like I can hear the thumb. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, cool. let's move on from, can you go from the secco part?
Yep. Oh, wait. I lost track of myself. Oh.
Okay, can you play, yeah, just stop for a second. Can you play just the right hand for me for now? Forget the left hand. Again, okay, so again, the trick here is to make it sound like more like this, like as if you're playing it. Like there is no difficulty in moving your hand, if that makes any sense. I'm cheating because I'm using both hands, but I want you to get the sound. I want you to get the sound that we're looking for, and then the idea is to go to figure out how to do that really efficiently. So even I would have to practice that, but probably going one ta-dum, ba-ti-dim, ba-dum, ba-dum. Practicing usually to the thumb is a good idea. So practice before the bar line. Don't practice on the downbeat. You know, go here, now to here, now to there, to here. Now go to there, go to here, go to here, go to here, go to here. Yeah, that's harrowing. But if you practice it enough across the bar line, you'll get really good at jumping there quickly. Because what we really want to hear is that line be uninterrupted. Yeah, sorry for the reading, but so can you try that a little slower and think across the bar line at least now?
One sec. I'm going to pin your video so I can actually see you a little
Oh
bit.
yeah, sorry.
Oh, it's
Okay.
just I'm sharing the screen. That's
Yeah.
why. If
Got it,
I
okay.
just
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the idea was to go across, and it's usually some kind of down up, and across.
What do you want me to do then? Sorry.
Yeah, just go a little slower. Yeah, and also if you use that section, if you think a little bit more about economy of motion in your body as well, you're using a lot of torso kind of throughout. It's interesting if you look back at this, because it's being recorded. If you look at your performance, you'll be able to see your torso moving a lot. It's a physical piece, no question. But some of these Russian guys, they sit there, you know, and they're like a rock on their piano bench, and they're just kind of like this, and then their hands are going like crazy, you know, but they're entirely grounded into their bench. And I know you're not sitting at a real piano and et cetera, but I think you need a little bit more grounding and a little bit more freedom of your upper body. That's not, because actually creating too much movement will make it more difficult to play cleanly and efficiently, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So it has to be an internal emotion that you're feeling, that you're externalizing in the piano, but it can't come out too much like your torso moving around. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that will also improve the quality of the softness. If it's piano secco, right? And you really want it to, if you want that to be soft, you're gonna need to be a little closer to the keys. All of this stuff needs to be economical. And I'm not talking about being tense, but I'm talking about using as little motion as you can get away with. Mm-hmm. All right, can you try a little bit less motion, a little bit softer, and think across the bar?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but you're understanding where I'm getting to, right, with that.
Right.
So that, I think, anytime you have these kind of disparate sections where it's like it always goes dum, not right. So we want to connect it. Okay, let's go on to the next section here, this transitional section.
Okay.
Yeah. So can you make those two things very different? I'd love to hear kind of inside of the notes. I'm going to play it slower because you know I haven't practiced it. Sorry. I want to hear ba 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 ba, but I also want to hear ba da ba da ba da ba da. I want to hear shaping in both hands, like very polyphonic, almost Bach-like.
Okay.
Because then when you get to this, that can become totally different. Do you see what I mean? If you play this, continue to play secco like he wrote before, I don't see a reason why this would be any different. I don't believe in pedaling this section necessarily going. It gets to be a mess. What if you just play it, take your right foot off and go. Whatever it is, then pedal right there, you know? That section, pedal that as a harmony. Change and to the downbeat. And again. And now again. You see what I mean? Then we get two contrasting ideas. We get bottom, 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 wah 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 bottom, 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 one pada judy. If you kind of sing through a piece like sort of rudimentarily, sometimes it gives you a lot of information. Like this seems ridiculous that I'm doing this, right? But and I'm not singing it on pitch or anything, but it's just the gesture. It's just like da 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 ba 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 da ba da judy da 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 judy da 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 yum ba da judy da 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 dee da 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 yum ba da yum ba da yum ba da ba 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 ba. All right, try to see if you can like sing through the piece that way. Then all of a sudden you're gonna be like, oh, that needs to sound like more aggressive, or this has more direction to it. Okay, cool. Let's try some of those ideas right there from the pianissimo. Yeah, so the cool thing about this whole section is that he's increasing the length and sort of messing with the entrance of that little slurred line. And you really can't hesitate too much on it. I know it's a bear to play, but what if you grouped it, whatever fingering you're using, you need to figure out a way to group it together. Whatever it is. So let me do one hand. Probably something like that, or at least two sections that you can divide it into that way, and then you combine those as into one gesture, so that it to the ear it sounds like boom. It has to continue to move through the bar. Makes sense? Because right now I'm hearing kind of triplets like da 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 ti da 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 ti da 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 yum or something like that, or wherever your thumb is moving. I hear some kind of shift in that's stopping the motion from continuing. Would you mind starting? I think it's 38 right there. Yeah, can you just do that section kind of slower? And can you stop, say, on the beat 2? And on beat 4? And and then get to the downbeat.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would practice all of those by shifting that around. How about going? And always shaping it different ways. Try it. Yeah, now try that faster so that you can go something like that.
Why can't I start this?
Yeah, it messes with you, doesn't it? But okay,
Yeah.
so I'm sight reading this. Okay, but so you can do it because you know the piece, but you just not looked at it. You just not looked at it like this. You need to start thinking in chunks. It's funny. My last master class was with somebody very young, but I also talked about this in a different way. But I think teaching your body how to move through a phrase in a way that's natural, grouping it by more than just the rhythmic unit, grouping it by more what it feels like, either as a musical unit or as a bodily unit, if that makes sense. If you can get a passage, if it's a million notes and they go like that, you want it to feel like 1, 2, not a million notes. You don't want that. So in here, you also don't want, although that kind of digital precision helps, but I think it probably goes. In the right hand, I kind of hear 3 things because they all go up. And now to. Sorry. Make sense? Yeah, so divide it up. And then when you get to the last one, that's the ultimate one. That one's super long, so you have to figure out some impulses. So there you have groups that are harmonic. Right? So that's how I would divide those up, even in slow practice. Yeah, I'm not going to do it, but. Can you do it like that with both hands? So then you get kind of 4 things. Try it again. Yeah, and that left hand also needs more shape. So it's got chromatic going up, chromatic going up. Yeah, so I need to hear more of that. Always going across the bar line, you notice. Try that. Yeah, and some of this can be practiced kind of like 70% tempo, and then you can group them kind of. See what I mean? Kind of always going across the bar line, but doing it short bursts, and then combining those into 2, so you get. Something like that. And then eventually it feels like, oh, that's just going to be 3 things I'm tying together instead of 7 million notes. All right, let's move on to the moderato section.
Just wanted to keep track on time. We're
how
a
are we
little
doing?
bit 5 minutes over. But,
Oh, wow,
we
already?
can,
Okay.
Yeah, so you can work on one more section and then maybe call it. Yeah.
All right, sure.
Yeah.
Then you know what? Let's talk about where do we? Because actually, let me just summarize a few ideas for you too. All of these ideas we're talking about actually you can apply to the whole piece. Differentiating the articulation so that we have clearly non-legato sections followed by legato sections very clearly. Always playing across the bar line so that all of the musical gestures move in the direction that the phrases show. Ba-dam, ba-dam, ba-da. Na, da-dam, da-da, yeah. You don't ever want to break any of those units. Making transitions very very logical and not too obvious, making things tie together more organically. And that has to do with, again, thinking about the bar, thinking about the flow of the rhythm. Practicing passage work that's tricky by doing it in chunks that you combine. All these things we've covered, and I think that'll help you through the whole piece. Let's go maybe now. Well, actually, what would you like to touch on before we finish? Because it's your class.
I don't know. I don't have any particular spot, so.
Okay. Then in that case, I just wanted to point your attention to, where was this? Oh yeah, this section right at, actually kind of right where we were. This section, right? That needs to sound a little bit more orchestral. Like these two things are different. Here's a voice, a different voice, whatever. Right? This sounds almost like Petrushka. Right? And so that needs to be really texturally, you need to figure out what's important. And sing a little bit more across the bar line. Go to here, now go to there, now go to here, and now go to there. And this whole section I wasn't necessarily convinced by, because you took a lot of time in places, but it's a long descent. You've got all this stuff. And I think the rinse really happens in these last two bars. Try playing just the harmony sometime. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, just reduce it down to something more primordial, like just how the harmony moves, and then phrase it in a longer unit. Basically, you need longer units, and some of that has to do with maybe technical limitations right now, because it's hard. I mean, you have a lot of jumping around, so you just have to get really comfortable at skipping around, but also just listening more for the long line. As the last piece of advice, I liked your ending, but I think we need to feel more shock. That the way that you judge the energy from the poco più mosso at the very end, it has to be crazed but still in control. Like you have so much, you're so awesome that you will make us feel like like the world will spin out of control, but you've got it together because you've got the power. So even that crescendo before it goes subito, I really want to hear. I want to hear something that surprises me, but it doesn't change the rhythm. So can you maybe sing it in longer lines? Now you change the orchestration, but it doesn't change tempo in any way. It's just like you're conducting it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and there come the flutes, there come the bassoons, bam, and it's all in control. And then when you get to here, it just goes nuts, right? Whatever it is there, right? It's just the chromatic descent, but it has to keep on going. You can't stop the energy. If you stop the energy, you're dead in the water. So probably a slightly slower tempo than what you think you can play. Like take 90% and control it, and make us feel like we want to hear it faster or whatever, but we feel satisfied with the idea of control. Speed is not always about speed. It's sometimes about control. So that's my last piece of advice to you. And then shock me with this last chord. Have you thought about the connection? Right? It's just the Polonaise basically. Sorry, it's the 3 chord to the 1 chord. So it's the same idea as the Polonaise. It's just the 3 chord to the 5 chord to the 1 chord. So here it's not super shocking, but it can sound more shocking. Probably make me believe that this is the ending. Right, and then all of a sudden it's not. So I hear a cadence here. 4, 5, 1. Wait. Oh crap. And I wouldn't take time there. If you're gonna take time at the rest, right at the cadence, the real cadence. Just a touch. And then the D flat is a big surprise. It's not supposed to be there. Can you try just the ending for fun? Let's go from this. And there you want to summon all the power that you have. Pedal deep down, torso in. You're gonna be just Gilels in this moment. Forward, forward. Forward, forward, forward. Almost like you're going through the piano in those chords. Up, up.
All right.
That's all the time we have, I think.
Thank you so much.
All right, you're so welcome.
All right, Sean, I just want to say I had so much fun. Sean and Tom, I had so much fun watching this class. I think you guys had a great chemistry going, and Sean, this is about as good as I've heard people play on a keyboard. Like that's really like I didn't know that.
Something exceptional.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard someone play a Prokofiev sonata, not as a joke, but an actual performance, and played it so well. And also, second of all, thank you for signing up for the masterclass and telling your friends about it. Your friends and your fans are going crazy in the chat, and I was reading it. And Tom, you can read during the replay. You can watch.
Yeah, I'd love
it's
to
crazy.
see what's going on there. Yeah.
No, people love you guys. People love you guys.
Awesome.
And thank you guys in the chat. Some of you asked for an extension of this class to unfortunately we can't extend it to 10 hours, but but that was one of the requests. I just wanted I wanted to acknowledge that. I had so much fun, and I hope you guys continue to spread the words for us. This is a new venture. I had fun learning. I learned a lot, doing these classes. I hope you guys did too. And just really, I need your help, spreading the words. So again, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Have a great evening, Sean.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right. That was so fun. Yeah, we're still on.
We're still on. Okay.
Yes. That was just closing now, right?
Okay, perfect.
What did you think? Any last words for our audience?
Go through the bar line.
Go through the bar line. All right. Cool. All right. Well, with that, I guess this concludes our masterclass. As I've said, we need help spreading the words. We have some great performance opportunities. I always want to tell my friends and people who, that want to learn more about our class. This is not just about taking a lesson. I think playing for a master class is also about just having a performing opportunity. You get to play for the teacher, a great teacher. You get a really professional perspective, and then you also get to play for the audience. So I think this is a great chance for people to grab. Right? You agree, Tom?
Absolutely.
You up for it?
I'm up for it.
All right, cool.
Everybody listen to Piano League.
Yes, great. All right. So with that, the usual, if you want to learn more about, Tom, go to his website. It's just his full name.com, right? Tomasz, Robak.com. And if you want to learn about our classes, go to thepianoleague.com. There's a because we couldn't get the pianoleague.com domain. So we'll work on that. And check out our showcase. Deadline is tonight. 7 to 12-year-old, one piece repertoire. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Obviously, we have awesome content. It's not just masterclasses. We have all kinds of content. So with that, we finished today's episode. Everyone, happy Friday night. Happy practicing. And we'll see you next time. All right? All right.